Watch how Rupert Lowe unleashes a blistering attack on civil servants during a fiery session of the Public Accounts Committee. This wasn't polite questioning. This was an all-out confrontation. Accusations of incompetence, claims of a mutating rulebook, fury over sewage spills, farming chaos, and regulators asleep at the wheel. When Lowe declared, "You don't know your own rulebook," the room shifted. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. If you care about what's really happening in British politics, behind the headlines, beyond the spin, then please take just 1 second to like this video and subscribe to the Britain Daily. It's completely free and it helps us keep bringing you the hard-hitting stories that matter.
I've declared my interest as a farmer. I'm an active farmer, and I have to tell you, my experience of DEFRA is a very poor one, and most farmers would agree with me that DEFRA is not fit for purpose. You know, your rulebook mutates like a virus. Half the time you shut your schemes within 24 hours because you've got it wrong and everybody's claiming legume fallow in this case. You know, how can an industry that is based on long-term planning, how can they respond when you don't know your own rulebook? And the other thing you've got a problem with, in my view, is you can't keep staff for more than a nanosecond. They all disappear, they go. So 1 minute you've got a contact you speak to, the next minute you've got a new temp who doesn't know the rules themselves. So I'm sorry, I really think that rather than giving us a lot of spiel, you know, somebody needs to get their head down and have a plan to sort this out, because farming is a crucial industry to this country. And as a farmer, I can tell you, and I have adequate intelligence, I find it very hard to follow your homunculus-like rulebook, which changes like the weather. So it's terrible.
Perhaps I could pick up a few of those points in turn, and just for your reassurance, we have got our head down and we are trying to sort this out, but I recognise some of the challenges that you are raising, and specifically on, I think you're referring to the closure of the SFI.
You're giving me lots of aspiration.
Order. We must let the permanent... You've had your question.
So on the very specific point about closing the funding window, I think that's a reference to the closure of SFI last year. You're quite right, there are lessons for us to learn. Ministers have been very clear that that was a breach of trust. We lost a lot of trust with farmers when that happened, and they've been equally clear they're going to take their time to make sure that we set up the SFI windows for this year, the first of which will open in June, in a way that gives much more clarity and certainty and transparency over the money, so that we are never in the situation where we have to close a window unexpectedly. And that's a fair criticism and one way we're changing our systems. On the overall complexity of regulations that farmers face, I think, again, that is true. It is something that Baroness Batters talks about in her review of farming profitability, and therefore it is one of the reasons why we have this process I was describing of continually reviewing and assessing where we can simplify regulations. Actually, the Department of Business and Trade is just starting a review on, particularly on farmers, around the clarity of guidance, the amount of data that is collected, and any regulatory barriers to farmers being able to take up new agri-tech. So that's a good example, I think, of a particular piece of regulatory review. The final point that you raised about the risk of regulations changing a lot, I think, is a really important one too, and something you have to hold in the balance as a department alongside the appetite for getting on with the regulatory change. Just to take a sort of an example that crossed my desk last week, looking at the responses to a consultation we've recently been running on environmental industrial permitting, where there were various proposals for how we might improve and streamline that system. Some of the responses from business, understandably, were, yeah, that might make it better, but you know what, we'd rather you just didn't change it, because there is a cost to us from changing it. So, like, in the same way we have to hold lots of other things in balance, one of the things we have to hold in balance is the degree to which you provide stability and certainty for people who are regulated, and also the opportunity when they do arise to improve and simplify regulations.
Makes sense. Rupert, yes, please, do carry on. Have you got another question?
I think I've got one more question on this for Philip. I mean, again, I find the Environment Agency, first of all, I think you all trip over each other. So I don't think DEFRA's giving you the leadership. I mean, it's not entirely your fault. You come in under their umbrella, but giving you a personal example. So I've had two problems on I have part of the River Colne flows through my farm. So we have, for a start, Thames Water, whose storm drains, when we get a storm, you get raw sewage flowing into the Colne. Nothing gets done about that. And again, I think the Environment Agency, you're too soft. In my view, you're as soft as a boiled maggot with them. You should deal with that.
Okay, you made
equally, Geoffrey. The other issue was sulfuric. There was a fire in a chemical store on the banks of the river, and we had hydrochloric acid that the fire brigade couldn't therefore put the fire out. And this hydrochloric acid got into the river. It took you 5 years to deal with it.
Rupert, I think we...
So, Geoffrey, I think there's a lot that needs to be done.
No, I agree.
Loads of stuff.
Yeah, right. Come on. Which one? Philip, do you wish to answer that?
Okay. Where would you like to start? Hydrochloric acid, storm spills, IT, what would be best?
Start with Thames Water.
Start, okay.
Water quality.
Right. So let's just start with that. First of all, we have to follow the law as it is, not how we would like it to be. And I just want to remind the committee that in many cases, a sewage spill during a period of extremely high rain is lawful. I recognise that is not a popular position, but that is the law. And quite often, people say, why have you not prosecuted this company? And the answer is, a storm overflow that takes place during a wet day can be lawful. I just want to make that point. That may be the case in that area. And secondly, I want to make a point about criminal prosecutions, if I may, because we do them. We are a very strange regulator that we lack the civil prosecution powers that our colleagues in Ofwat happen. That's a key finding, actually, of the Cunliffe Review, that you need to actually level up the civil penalty. It's faster and cheaper. We are seeing cases now with water companies we are taking, and the court listing can be 3 years away before we get to court. So there is a genuine issue there about whether a criminal prosecution structure is going to be an effective deterrent against this offending in the water sector. And the answer to that, of course, is to bring in more civil penalties. They were proposed in the Water Special Measures Act. There is, in fact, a thing called a variable monetary penalty, which DEFRA will need to move the second legislation. We're waiting for that to happen later this year. And we may, under the Cunliffe proposal, see the new regulator, the super regulator, have the ability to levy more civil penalties on water companies that we cannot currently do in the Environment Agency. So there's clearly a justice and enforcement gap there. No one is denying that. But I think it's a bit harsh to attack my frontline staff who are doing their best to try and bring those cases to court. It's very, very challenging. All that said, we do prosecutions against water companies. We've done quite a few of them. I think 39 in the last 3 years, so not doing too badly. Hydrochloric acid, were you talking about the criminal prosecution of that case?
That took 5 years, yeah.
5 years right now is quite good going, I'm afraid to say.
2006. So.
Okay, well, I wasn't there in that period. And then on your other points, if I may just say a bit about systems and so on. So, in 2020, looking back a few years, the Environment Agency got to a situation where if you took out all its access spreadsheets, all of its data, it had 700 IT systems. And since then, we have made very, very good progress on turning around that legacy. We've closed down 350 of those systems and modernised and moved them onto secure cloud with great help from our colleagues in DEFRA, Digital and Technology. We had a situation in which it was impossible for members of Parliament to find out what was happening in their constituency on water quality. There was no web explorer, the data wasn't available. You could only access a report through an FOI. Now we publish all of our reports. There is a water explorer, go and have a look at it. All our data will be on there. Now we have to repeat that trick for waste and for the other sectors. I appreciate that, but we are making quite good progress. In 2023, we were set targets by DEFRA. I personally believe in targets. I think public bodies need targets. Only 23% of them were met. Last year, 63% were met. This year, we're aiming for 75%. Now, you may say these targets are misleading, they're not the right targets. Okay, open to that, that's a conversation to be had. But if you're running a large organisation, you need clarity from the sponsor department on the targets you have to meet, and then you have to do your darndest to meet them. And what it feels like right now in the A's, every month, I am saying to all of my area directors, are you meeting your targets? Maybe they're the right ones, the wrong ones, but people are trying to meet them. So I think we are making some progress, Mr. Lowe, and our board, who take a very, very serious look at the performance, who exactly had the reaction you had reading those, have pushed the executive team in the EA to improve performance at every level. We may not be wholly there, but we are making progress.
What we've just witnessed was more than frustration, and it was a rare moment where a serving MP spoke not as a career politician, but as someone directly affected by the system he was scrutinising. Rupert Lowe didn't hold back. As both a parliamentarian and an active farmer, he accused Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, DEFRA, of presiding over chaos. A rulebook that mutates like a virus. Funding schemes that close without warning. Staff turnover so high that no one seems to know the policies they are enforcing. For farmers, he argued, this isn't just bureaucratic inconvenience. Farming is built on long-term planning. Crops, livestock cycles, environmental schemes, they operate across seasons and years. When regulations shift suddenly or grant windows slam shut overnight, livelihoods are thrown into uncertainty. The civil servants push back carefully. They admitted mistakes, particularly over the closure of the sustainable farming incentive window. They acknowledged lost trust. They pointed to reviews, reforms and future clarity. But Lowe's broader argument wasn't about one scheme. It was about competence and leadership. Then came the environmental flashpoints. Raw sewage flowing into rivers during storms. Chemical spills taking years to prosecute. The Environment Agency defending itself by stating it must enforce the law as written, even if that law permits certain sewage discharges during heavy rainfall. That's where the debate sharpens. Because technically lawful does not always mean publicly acceptable. When communities see pollution in their rivers, legal nuance offers little comfort. The agency argued it lacks stronger civil penalty powers and must rely on slow criminal prosecution, sometimes taking years to conclude. They cited progress, upgraded IT systems, improved transparency, more performance targets being met. But here's the bigger question. Is incremental progress enough for an industry under strain? Farmers face rising costs, regulatory complexity, environmental pressures and global market competition. If the department overseeing them appears unstable or inconsistent, confidence erodes quickly. Trust, once broken, is difficult to rebuild. This clash wasn't simply about sewage overflows or IT systems. It exposed tension between frontline reality and administrative process, between lived experience and official reassurance. Lowe's language was blunt, even provocative. Yet it tapped into a wider frustration shared across rural Britain, that decisions are being made by people too distant from the consequences. Meanwhile, regulators insist they are modernising, improving and constrained by the legal framework Parliament itself created. So where does that leave us? On one side, a call for decisive reform, clearer rules, stronger enforcement and leadership that restores confidence in British farming. On the other, a bureaucracy insisting progress is underway, but constrained by law, structure and resource. The question now is whether this confrontation sparks meaningful change or becomes another headline moment in Westminster. If you found this analysis valuable, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Britain Daily for more in-depth breakdowns of the debates shaping the country. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you in the next one.